Hello, hello, welcome back to Capital and Command Live Story. I've got another interesting guest today, Chris. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name because people usually screw up this type of last name. So I will leave it up to you
Yeah.
how to
Chris
pronounce
is
it.
fine. Chris is
Yeah,
good.
yeah, Chris is fine. And and I will leave it up to you how you get it started in this whole entrepreneur story and introduce yourself. So the floor is yours, Chris.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Lexi, and thanks for having me. It's Shubershevsky. So it's pretty easy to say once you know how to do it.
Yeah,
But
exactly as it sounds.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Spell
appreciate
the-
it. Exactly. Yeah, I didn't spell it. All right, someone else did. So
yeah, it's a Polish
fault.
name. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I appreciate the ability to talk to different entrepreneurs and different folks who've been able to create companies and go through it because I think there is some interesting perspectives. I always learn something hearing from other folks, so I appreciate you having this kind of forum where folks can talk a little bit. I'll go ahead and say I don't think there's anything spectacularly, interesting or abnormal. I should say. I think my story is very similar to a lot of folks. But I started, my original work was undergraduate and post baccalaureate in neuroscience. I was looking at a lot of different ways, the neural substrates of things that we call schizophrenia or other affective
Hmm.
disorders, working on some very early work where we were using computerized tomography. I mean, it was some of the earliest times that we were actually looking at these images and figuring out ways that brain structures were actually different and figuring out, how it is the genetics matter for all that stuff.
Hmm.
I found out from there, it was fascinating to me looking at the systems, understanding the impact of this kind of work, looking at the technologies. I realized that I enjoyed thinking about it and writing about it a bit more than actually doing the scientific work itself.
Hmm.
And so when it was from a very early age, 23, 24, I realized my interest in more of operationalizing some of the existing technology, creating, the solutions instead of the earlier research. As valuable as that was, it's just my tendencies move toward the practical application of
Hmm.
this. And the way I did it was actually through writing, through a series of technical writing responsibilities in different environments, education and research, even media, and so and online and print media and that sort of thing. And I didn't intend to do this, but I ended up as one of the early employees of an orthopedic research center doing translational work, working with orthopedic surgeons and biomechanical engineers, and even physical therapists and clinical nurses, and trying to translate over newer technologies into products. So hips and knees, and surgical tools in order to make all that happen. And that was my first real experience in understanding what true product development and commercialization was, and how very powerful that could be, but also how very difficult it could be going through clinical trials,
Hmm.
going through all those pieces. So I was the key fundraiser there. I was the key communications officer person there. And I recognized, along with my co founder, a second opportunity, which was the opening of the Apple App Store and the putting out the 3G phone, at those earliest times, and then the opening of the Google phone. And so, along with the Orthopedic Research Center startup, I also started up, co-founded this app store, this app company to create applications to sell onto the App Store. Don't start two companies at the same time. Just for take it for someone who's done it. It's a terrible idea, but we did that, and we were able to sell that mobile device company. And I then moved over a little bit further into a couple of companies that great concepts, but a little bit different types. One, I started a theater. I'm a huge theater person, always have been, and admire what theater does, and that ran profitably for a couple of years. And then at the same time, I co-founded a company that was a large text service, text reading service, an LLM. So precursor to a lot of what we have right now.
Hmm.
And that was a little before its time, so it didn't really quite take off. But then I had the opportunity to co-found a company in the biotech space, orally delivered vaccines. and other biologics. And that was based on some research from a local co-founder and veterinarian and biology researcher named Maria Gomes-Selecki. She's a professor at the University of Tennessee here in Memphis. And I was able to find two more co-founders who are both biologists and molecular engineers over at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which is here in Memphis. And then also we were very lucky to find an experienced entrepreneur who had done some significant capital raises and had his own significant acquisition. When we met him, I fired myself immediately and pulled him in as a CEO. And thankfully, he joined us, Mason Kaufman. The other two folks were Steve Zatechka and Hassan Zarakat, respectively. And so from there, we moved forward and we took a very basic R&D version of a vaccine and we moved it into market. We went through the entire scaling of the manufacturing process, the regulatory process, and then we went into creating the distribution and sales programs. And what was interesting about this one specifically is that it's a vaccine against Lyme disease, but it's not what we would usually think. Ticks give us Lyme disease, but in the U.S., in the Northeast and the Midwest U.S., the majority of the ways that ticks get infected are by feeding on already infected mice. And so this vaccine that Maria Gomes-Selecki created, and I mentioned she's a veterinarian, was actually for mice. And so we created this vaccine. It's a vaccine-covered pellet that goes into your backyard via a pest management professional. And we created a timed application station specifically for this to allow a very small, controlled amount of the vaccines in a backyard setting, right? And this created all new regulatory pathways. This created all new distribution pathways. These did not exist before. We had to build all those ourselves. And then we went on to also start the creation of much larger federal and state programs for military installations, for public parks, camping grounds, those much larger public areas as well. And so right now, just to bring it up to date here, that's where we're now looking at either a private equity acquisition or a major licensing of the product and acquisition of the product. So we're looking now at what is that next transition of that company into its next step, into the scalable world, to get it from new product right into mature market product. So that's the very short fire hose version of everything.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot, and especially if I think about it, from all the guests so far that I had, I mean, I didn't have anyone with this type of background, so it's interesting because I mean, from kind of like from the neuroscience all the way to vaccines, and that's like really. I mean, I read it in books every once in a while, especially on COVID or things about that. But it's like I never seen kind of anyone in real life. So you're the first one who I'm talking to in this type of world.
Some sort of mythical being, right?
Yeah, it's like wow, yeah, you do exist. This people exist.
Yeah. But I'll tell you why. I mean, I'm not a technical subject matter expert. Okay, I'm not a scientist. And, what I've been able to do, though, is to work with some very remarkable engineers on the software side, or biologists or medical techs or surgeons or nurses, this whole variety of folks. And my main job is to help build a company around them, right? Then get them the resources they need, right? And then at the same time, give them help them create together a strategy, that gets us from a very basic technology all the way to the point of doing really great things for people and have a really good business plan with it, right? And demand the two of those come together. So whereas it seems like I've gone to several industries, and I guess that's true, really the underlying bones of what makes a business, still there's a lot of similarities there. And the mechanisms that are in play is really where I have contributed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like you still need to be technical enough to understand what they're saying, right? Because you can't just wrap around, like, and take somebody off the street, let's say great businessman, all of a sudden just throw into this and say, okay, go.
You're right. Yeah.
You still need to have somebody who can understand, because especially these scientists, they can be so nerdy and they can talk the talk that it just goes above normal people's head so
Sure.
much that you will
Yeah.
not know left or right if it's true or not, because it's so scientifically like
Yeah.
convoluted that like, okay, I don't know. You need to have a knowledge to at least
No,
accept
you're right.
one
You're
person
right.
alive, right?
And there's always a ramp up, and I always ask a lot of questions, especially when you're doing technical due diligence. That's where it can get a very murky if you don't have a deep
Mm-hmm.
dive in that. And you do need those subject matter experts on that side. Just to give an example, I've just moved into a new endeavor with Hitchhiker Orbital. Hitchhiker Orbital is in space. They build infrastructure in space. So specifically what they're doing is looking at how do they provide a platform by which different biomanufacturing can occur, in suborbital flight, so the payload goes up, it gets produced, it comes back down to Earth, and now you're able to use that, on the terrestrial sphere in order to do that. And it's a necessary thing because International Space Station is closing down. And so, again, from a technical standpoint, this is new for me, right? I mean, and so the engineers have to be very patient with me as I continue to ask good questions. I hope they're good questions. But it really is incumbent upon me to know that, right? I can't, you're right. There are times when the technical aspects will catch up to you, right? And it takes a lot of study and it takes a lot of due diligence and just working with folks.
Yeah, which actually brings me to good question that I always ask. So what kind of a dark chapter you encountered along the way
Yeah.
because I mean, especially you're trying to control people who are completely in their own world, especially
Yeah.
sometimes people are coming from academia. They're so centric on academia that they don't have any business acumen. So they have
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
idea how much to spend, how much not to spend.
Sure.
So like, what did you encounter along the way?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it control. From my perspective, the single best way of creating a team are remarkable individuals. And most of the time, when you're talking about those folks, they're top of their fields in terms of their science or their analyses or the capability of building things. Like any MVP or any other structure. If that's the case, then you're going to have to find a way to speak their language, right? And not only that, you're going to have to translate what they're saying into other people's language.
Yeah.
You'll find this a lot. That's when people say, "Oh, I'm a business person," they say, "I'm a science person." Really, it's just a matter of them speaking the same language, but at the same time having the same criteria of success, right? What do we mean by successful, right? And those can be very, very challenging when you say, well, what exactly is significant? Okay. Well, from a business and product standpoint, significant means one thing, but in science, there's a very specific, technical definition of what statistical significance means. Then you think about, well, what are my criteria for success? Is it getting a paper published, right? Or is it getting a regulatory filing? That's correct and allows you to move forward with your product. And I'm talking about from the bio side. I mean, this applies in all over the places. And so I think that, that's been one of my major jobs and something I've gotten a lot of experience in is saying, okay, let's meet these folks in the middle and let's figure out a way to have a conversation. And I think you get a lot of really good outcomes on that, because what I'm able to do then, if I am in that executive position and I am working with these subject matter experts who are also executives, I can understand what all their criteria for success are, right? I can work with them to understand exactly what their technical roadblocks will be and what are the resources they're going to need, right? And then I'm able to then cross over, okay, regulatory need, manufacturing, regulatory is going to need this from you. And you're going to have to satisfy this regulatory aspect, regulatory, I understand what you're asking for, but it might be a bit above and beyond what the regulatory agency is asking of us, right? Because I understand from a scientific point of view, there are aspects of this that are unsatisfactory, right? In the sense of not that the science is bad, but it doesn't answer all the questions that you would have as a bench scientist. But now you have to think, what is it that the regulatory needs, from an industry standpoint in order to move forward with the product, right? And then how do you translate that over to the manufacturing? And then you get to the sales side, right? It's like, I know what you want to say to your customer. I know the message you want to give them. Here's the reality of what the science does, right? Here's the reality, and you will not go past that. You will be transparent and you will be correct in all cases with the science. But at the same time, here's what regulatory allows you to say, right? And they're two different things. The science can tell you all sorts of cool stuff, but regulatory will only allow you to stay in this box, right? So again, it's a translation issue. So from my perspective, I really have had just, again, the tremendous honor of working with these remarkable people, but just helping them, with those different experiences and trying to be able to work together. And when it works well, it works very well. When it doesn't, it can be very challenging. It can be very challenging.
So can you give some example, like, some as a backstory? Because again, you're in this world, so you know all this kind of complexity. But I'm sure that people who are watching, as I said, they have not seen a lot of people in this type of industry. So I would be curious.
No, I'll give you a great example. I mean, so we had this cool oral vaccine for mice. We know it works. We did 5 years of field trials. Then we followed up with 2 more years of field trials. We knew how to make it. We knew our regulatory pathway was going well. I mean, we were steaming forward with this product, and then we sat down with our intended distributors, the pest management community. And we did that because this is a backyard, opportunity. That's where all the mice and the ticks are. That's where most people get Lyme disease. And we said, okay, we're going back there. You guys are going to distribute this for us. And they said, okay, how often do you distribute it? And we say, about 8 times over the summer, right? Because it's it's a vaccine. It's in the animals need a prime and a boost, and they need to continue to get a boost over time. Now, keep in mind, pest management professionals are chemists, right? They're chemical folks. They work with drugs and they work with poisons and chemicals, right? We're coming at them from a biologic standpoint, and so this was a big gap to begin with. Now, the second big gap, though, was, guys, we don't go into anyone's backyard 8 times over the summer. We don't go into anyone's backyard 8 times during the year. We go quarterly, right? That's our schedule. Almost all of us go on a quarterly basis. And it doesn't sound to us like your vaccine works that way. So I don't know why we have a product here. So suddenly, here we are a couple of years in, a couple $1 million in, and this was all on us, right? This was all on us because we did not ask these questions up front, right? And these are just one of those lessons that you have to learn if you're doing a product. You have to go to those people who are going to buy your product and ask them, how often are you going to buy this thing? And when are you going to put it out? So suddenly we had no product. Just that was the only way to say it. You just had no product for this pest management industry. It was a quiet airplane ride home, right? As we're all kind of in our own heads, it's like, what have I been doing? And, how is this? How did we miss this and everything else? But as of that Monday, we were at the coffee shop and we had napkins in front of us, and we were saying, well, wait a minute, could we create a device that would work with the pest management professional schedule, and allow just the right amount of these vaccine pellets, and could we make it throughout the year? And so that began the process of building what we call the Lyme Shield system, right? And it's the Lyme Shield station, which is a round object, and it has wells for the pellets, right? And every couple of weeks, more pellets are releases. It just moves around. Yeah, the carousel in the center moves around. It's an elegant, robust system. It took us 6 versions to get to one that worked. We worked with the pest management professionals from day one. We said, how does this work? Put it in the backyards. How did you break it? Let's try it again so it won't break. And we just continue to add features and refine things. But that was a point where we had to pivot pretty hard. We were a biologics company, and suddenly we became an electrical engineering company, right? With a computer board and those kinds of pieces. So we had to actually pivot over and combine the two together. And that's where we also became a delivery company, really, because these pellets could go to all sorts of animals. This station could be modified to all sorts of animals. It could be hung in a tree for squirrels. Let's give an example. Or a bird feeder, for birds, or for your pets, and it broadened the entire platform. But that really came through with a big failure. That was the key starting point.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And the only way we got through it, again, was to be able to translate all these different skill sets. The electrical engineer the biologics vaccine expert, and then ultimately the regulated system, the regulated bodies, the USDA, and then the pest management professionals, to be able to do it that way. And then the final frontier was explaining all this to a customer, to have the customer understand that it was. And that's where we began to get that real traction. It took years. It took a bit more capital than we expected. And it just took us on a journey we didn't expect at all to go through. But it was the fact that the team there, and by then we had brought on, a new expert chief technical officer, Jolika van Oosterwijk. We brought on a new chief regulatory officer, John Brook, brilliant in their own areas. And then, even then, a guy named Steve Good, who was our pest management professional sales specialist. He used to sell about $2 billion a year in this stuff. So suddenly we had to bring in all these team members who could, address this whole, puzzle, of bringing this product into market and being successful. So it's great. It's a lot of fun. It's terrifying and exhausting. And it changes you emotionally and physically. It challenges you in all these incredible ways. And 1 out of 10 work. It's not successful often. And I wouldn't say that we're 100% successful yet either. Right? We still need to scale the thing. We still need to go to the next level.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting because it sounds. I mean, in my professional life, I came from a solution architecture, and I was a chief architect in a big company. So we were always going to different clients, and I always have to come up with a solution for the architecture, like how to basically fit the round peg in a square hole, or the other way around, right? And so it's like, how do you combine these two? So like, as you were talking, like the first thing that popped into my mind, like, okay, who shows up every week to treat your lawn? As an example, in your backyard, who?
Yeah.
The lawn care people, not the pest control people, but
that
lawn care
people.
Yes,
like,
you can kind of like,
another great market. Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like another great market that sometimes like some things can be so simple in a solution, like if you are stepping outside of your own little world and stepping, like, literally start to abstracting yourself and looking from outside, you can find out all kinds of solutions just by stepping out. So yeah, it's great. I mean, that you found your own solution for it, especially because lawn care people will not probably put something for squirrel because they don't care about that part, right? But
right.
Yeah.
Well, you have to give them a good product, and that's where they'll really start to look at it. And here's a part that's really interesting, though. The regulatory standpoint, right? We are the first time you can deliver a vaccine to your home. Okay, it's never happened before. Now think about this world.
Scary. It sounds scary, right?
It sounds like scary.
Except in your home, but it's like it's not the vaccine that. It's not like you're injecting me with something, right?
That's right.
Right.
It's an oral vaccine, and secondly, it's a terrible disease that you can't stop otherwise, right? And thirdly, let's look at what happened in the pandemic. Okay. What happened when people couldn't really leave their homes or get a vaccine and couldn't get the vaccine to them, right? Or what would happen if we found something in the wastewater, a new virus, okay? The new wastewater virus sensors that we have that says, look, there's a new, flu virus or a new COVID virus or, one of these viruses that we're just dealing with constantly. Could we have a system by which we could create orally delivered vaccines and have those orally delivered vaccines going to a neighborhood of like 10,000 homes and being delivered by emergency medical services, ambulances and fire department and that sort of thing, going home to home. By the way, this is what they already do, right? That's what they do is go to your home to deliver medical services, right? And they say, look, here's what's happening right now. We're going to give this to you. It's your choice to take it. And then if you do, we're going to be in the neighborhood for the next 3 hours. So if anything happens, give us a call. We'll be back in 5 minutes. You have changed the world in terms of how it is you deal with an infectious disease response. Okay. You have changed everything. You have stopped this massive issue of, having to have people go to where your vaccines are, right, at a distribution point, right, and having super spreading events or having shortages or having, lines out the door, all those other things, you've eliminated all that, and this is where it begins. Now, what I just said is years in the future and a lot of regulatory work to be done, a lot of distribution work to be done, a lot of safety work to be done, much less having the vaccines actually ready to do it. But the kernel is there. This precedent has been set, and we had to do that just to get a product. Just to get a product out there, we had to achieve that. Again, not what we intended. That I didn't get into that business. But on the other hand, that's exactly what we had to do. And there's something very special about that. I think that's at the heart of what some of these really great companies can do when all of a sudden they've achieved a new threshold and they've changed the concept, the way the world works. And I believe we've done that in our own small way. I'm not saying it's going to catch fire and it's going to happen, over and over again. I am, however, saying we did set a precedent, and people in the future could look back at that and go, well, they did it. They did it. Why can't we? And start thinking about it in that way.
Yeah, which is, great segue to, because my typical question is like, what kind of a pivotal moment you had in your journey? I think it's like one of these pivotal moments, right? You came in as one company, but you had to pivot to to not just completely say, oh, okay, I give up, I'm done, right? So you have to find a way to pivot and to break the ice and do something new, which was never done before, right?
Sure.
So any other pivotal moments you can kind of mention?
I don't want to make it sound like I'm just some fearless explorer jumping out into the world. This company partly was started because I was out of a job, right? And sometimes it's like it was 2008 or thereabouts. And it kept going to about 2010. And, I was out of a job. It was extremely difficult market for anything going on. And, you have to keep going. You have to keep trying things. You have to keep doing things to move forward. And that's where, this opportunity happened, and, worked from about 2010 to 2012, not paid, just seeking funding, pulling together what we could from a sweat equity standpoint, and then launching about that time period. So, it's not like I left a $3 million a year job to make the leap and go be an entrepreneur, right? I was out of a job, man. I needed something, and it took a lot longer than I wanted, but that's every company. And my comment was, well, what's my alternative? It's not like I'm finding a job in the industry or otherwise, just because of how the market is right now. And so, sometimes we see the entrepreneurial story of, they decided to take the leap out of their comfortable corporate position or something. And I respect them. I respect the hell out of them. That's good stuff, man. But that wasn't my story. My story was I didn't have anything else to do. And I had this wonderful opportunity working with this professor. And I had this team that very, very thankfully, decided to get together as a group of 5 and launch this thing off, So again, it's just a matter of, if you keep looking, you'll keep finding opportunities. And if that's the case, take advantage of them. And not all of them work, obviously. Very few of them work, but you still keep trying.
I think that's the definition of entrepreneur. You cast a net wide with all kinds of things and see which one will pan out. You have no idea which one, right? And sometimes you go one way and you think that's the way that you're going to go, but then things change and you completely in a different direction. Like you changed, you started one thing, but you ended up in a completely different business altogether.
I think so. And the folks who are really good at it, their best part, I think, is being able to say no. They know when there's no market validation. They know when there's no signal. Some people can be very bullheaded about it, and they go just to unreasonable lengths. Now, don't get me wrong. If you have a task, if you have a thing that you believe in, then you will find a way or you will make one. Okay. You will achieve that if you find it. But what in the case of you just looking at it going, there's nothing there. There's no market. There's no technology. There's no pathway. I think the entrepreneur who's going to be a professional entrepreneur, one who's going to do it for a lifetime, they're going to have to know how to do that. They're going to have to be very, very hard and rigorous and say, guys, I love it too. I love you guys, but there's nothing here. There is no market signal. And so it's not just flighty, it's not just following the silver object, a little shiny object. It's a system of very rigorous market validation, and having a very high standard, I think, of what is a good company.
Yeah, because I mean, again, a few episodes, like maybe 10 episodes or more back, one guest, she was saying that, okay, she wanted to be an entrepreneur and she dove in, not knowing, into the lawn care, by the way,
Yeah.
business. And
Okay.
she didn't anticipate that, oh, the lawn care business actually thrives on what? On word of the mouth.
Yeah.
Not advertisement, not
That's
marketing,
right.
but word of the
That's right.
mouth.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
connection because I mean, if you have a loan, most likely who is taking care of your loan? If it's not you, then probably somebody who you know through your neighbors or
Sure.
through
Yeah.
through somebody who said, "Oh yeah, these guys are good. They're doing a great job." Right? It's not you're not going to open the old style yellow page and say, "Okay, I
No,
will take this guy. I will take that guy." No, you're not going to
that's right.
experiment, right? So the same idea, like yeah, if somebody's starting this business, it's like, oh, you're really confined to a very small area all of a sudden, so you cannot really get as much as you think you can. It's a
Yeah.
great product, but it's so limited. Then you need to find a way how to expand it, how to make it
Yeah.
more
That's right.
marketable to outside. And that's what you said, like the market is not there, then it is what it is. Like you need to adjust and
You
find a
know,
pivot.
and
Right?
I think that's a very hard thing for some people to understand. It's like, look, you could have a remarkable technology. You could have the coolest technology ever, and it could be a huge need. It could be a massive societal or business need. Okay, but if no one's going to buy it, it's not a product. And that, just because it's a great
Mm-hmm.
solution and just because it's a needed solution does not mean it's a product. It doesn't mean there's a market for it. And that's a very difficult thing for some people to wrap their head around because it doesn't make any sense. All right. That doesn't make any sense. If I've got a great solution, there's a big need, people should pay for it. Right. But that's just not how the market works. And so I think that's just something, again, that's very difficult, for folks to accept, And frequently when I'm working with entrepreneurs, they'll say, okay, they'll try to sell me on the technology and the need. And I'll go, stop. I believe you, is what I'll tell them. I'm like, I believe you got the greatest thing ever. I believe this is the biggest need ever. What about your market? Who's buying this? How much will they pay? How often will they pay? How are you going to get to them? And how much time
Mm-hmm.
and money will that take? Right. And in that case, how profitable will you be? And that's where the conversation degrades quickly, because I don't think people really will dig into that willingly, but that's the difference. That's the difference maker, of what it is. You have to find great product, great need, and a great market, and that's where the three have to align. And then you can actually find the pathway to market, because there's those
Mm-hmm.
three steps. So it's a big
Well,
deal.
it's because again, every single entrepreneur who didn't stumble on somebody else's business, but let's say they had an idea, right? They love it. It's their baby,
Yeah. Oh,
and all
sure.
the babies
Sure.
are beautiful, right? In our own wise. Outside, people can say something else, but everyone else's baby is different, right? Like, oh, my
Yeah.
baby is the most beautiful baby, kind of a thing, right? It's the same
You're
idea.
absolutely right.
So,
It's a very
yeah,
personal thing. Whenever
yeah.
I talk to new entrepreneurs, I ask them a very important question to me. What do you want out of this? What's your goal? Right?
Mm-hmm.
If a person tells me I want to be my own boss, okay, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. You can be an accountant. You can be, a lawyer. You can be a doctor, right? You can, those are perfectly good independent businesses. If a person
Mm-hmm.
says, I want to be rich, I go, okay, I get it. You can be an accountant. You can be a lawyer. You can be a doctor. There are very rich individuals who do those things. Why do you need to start a company? Right. And, we kind of dig in that. I do it for a reason. It's because are you following your passion or are you following where there's a good market? People say follow your passion. I'm all for that. Okay. That doesn't mean you can make a living out of it. That doesn't mean there's a market there. Right. That's what you have to do to validate it. If you need to, and most people do, they need a way to make their living. Right. Almost everybody does. Mass majority. I understand that, but is your dream have a market for you to get there? Right. And again, these are really hard questions, but these are the questions you have to answer. And sometimes, by the way, you can't answer them until you go through the experience, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can't do it. You
Yeah.
just don't know, right? Until you're going through the experience. And then you realize, okay, this is, or this isn't what I thought, or I hoped it would be. Right. Again, this is why I really kind of push people on this. It's like, what do you need out of this? You need to tell me something specific. And, if they said, look, I see a great opportunity, I can develop this product, I can sell this product, and then I can have this company acquired, and I want to be able to help people and make really good business plans to do it. I want to help people and make really good business plans. I go, okay, we're aligned. That's what I want too. Right. That's my goal, is to help people and to have really good business plans that'll have good ROI. But all sorts of other answers are good too. But a lot of them also are just go to med school. Go be an accountant. I mean, it works. You're helping people.
Yeah.
You're doing good financially, not necessarily, but you're trying. Those kinds of things work out.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of, I mean, imagine yourself 20, 30 years younger.
Yeah.
Right now, what would you recommend to your younger self?
Yeah.
Knowing the path that you went through and all kinds of things. Because 2008, obviously, it was 18 years ago. So
it
wasn't that far, but it's right before.
feels like it sometimes. I wouldn't tell myself a darn thing. I wouldn't meet myself. I wouldn't even look at myself. I would avoid myself at all costs.
Really?
Because every mistake that I've made, every moment of anxiety, every moment of challenge, has put me here. Right. And even though there are still continual challenges on a daily basis, this is who I am, and I would not have my capabilities or my mindset now if I changed anything earlier on. Right. So I earned all those things, and I bear the marks. But at the same time, I wouldn't have traded them off. You would have a very different person. You would have a very different life, good or bad. I don't know. What I'm just saying, it would be very different than who I am right now. Now, when I do talk to younger people, though, and just talking about them in general, I'll tell them two things. I'll say, first of all, you keep working. If you keep digging, if you keep trying things, opportunities will continue to rise up. This idea of this is my last chance is false. It's not true. Until you leave this earth, and that goes for a long, long ways. There are, of course, situations where people have some sort of incapacity. But even then, there are opportunities most of the time for them to have some sort of activity into this world. Okay. So keep looking, keep digging, try different things. If you're going to do something, go deep dive on it. The second thing I'll tell them is this. Yes, try all sorts of things, right? But on the one hand, if you go and you don't have that signal, you don't feel it in your heart, you don't see the market, you don't see the pathway, whatever your reasoning is, if you don't have that passion for it, okay, have the discipline to set it aside, okay? On the other hand, have the understanding that when you do find that thing, you will find a way, or you will make one. You go into it, you find it, you don't let yourself step away from it. Don't cheat yourself of that moment. I'm not saying you're going to achieve your goal, right? I'm not saying that you won't ever change directions. I'm saying at that moment in your life, don't be afraid of it and go deep. Go far as you can and try to break down every barrier and just, again, find a way or make one. Because I think that those kinds of experiences build you up. Those kinds of experiences help you understand what it takes to get through a wall, right? Because there will be other walls, and there'll come a time when that wall really matters and you have to break through it. And now you have that experience. You know how much it's going to hurt when you hit that wall, right? You know how many bones you're about to break, but you've done it before, you're stronger for it, and you're ready for it, right? So if you can do that, I think a lot of people would have pretty good lives in that way, in my opinion, professionally.
Well, I mean, it comes back again. Not everyone can be entrepreneur or has to be entrepreneur. Some people just don't want to be, right? Some people are actually much more comfortable to work 9-to-5 job and not think about other things. Because as an entrepreneur, it's almost like you're always on. It's even on a vacation, you're really always on. I don't know how else to describe it. Not because you're crazy, but because it's kind of like it becomes your life. You're just thinking these things through. You're playing with your kids, like I say, in the ocean. I love Maui, and I go to Maui with my family every year, and I'm playing in the ocean, and still yet I have it in the back of my mind, like, oh, that solution, damn it, when we
Yeah,
get back to the
yeah,
condo, I will put it in my writing, because
yeah,
like I will
yeah.
forget otherwise. Right now, it's just it's always on. I don't know.
You are. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
true. My laptop goes with me every trip, and I'm up at the 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, hour, just taking care of some stuff, and then I'm with my family, for the rest of the day, and I'm still doing like you're doing. I'm taking voice notes. That's what I do. I grab my phone and take voice notes. Hey, remember this, and yada yada yada. Um, and by the way, I do respect the heck out of people who are able to make it into the corporate world. I mean, that's a hard place right now. There are a lot of layoffs. There are a lot of hard ways to get through that. So people who have achieved there, I really respect them as well. I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if my sensibilities. I would be surprised. Let me put it that way. I don't know if I can or can't. I'd be very surprised if I could go into a Fortune 100 and be successful. So I really admire people who can do that. It's just not what I do.
Actually, surprisingly, in a few guests back, I had one gentleman. He is used to be a CEO of Pitney Bowes. It's the shipping company, and he was an entrepreneur.
Sure.
So he was
Yes.
the entrepreneur within the actual company.
Right.
Think of it
Yep.
this way. So even in the corporate world, you can still act as an entrepreneur, but
yes.
just
Yeah.
with the confines of the company, right? You
Yes.
have your budget.
Yep.
You can mollify that budget to adhere to the entrepreneurial
Yes.
spirit, but you don't have to be an owner of the company yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's possible even in that in corporate world.
100%. Yeah. You can make great things anywhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, so anything that is exciting in you in your next chapter, in your next thing, in your next endeavor that you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that. I think, with US Biologic, it's I'm rotating off probably soon and letting that new team step in with that product. I might continue to have a role there, but they're really going to take that product and take it to the new heights, and I'm so excited about that. It's going to be great for the team, but for the people who are going to benefit from the product, it's going to be great for the stockholders. Okay, all the way across. What I'm doing a lot more now is a lot more mentoring. I talk to, I'm part of the Johns Hopkins Venture Group. I'm part of Innosphere. I'm part of Nucleate. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at the University of Memphis, which is a lot of fun. So I'm just working with all these different companies, young companies, most of it in the biotech space, a couple of medical devices, a couple other things, and now also really enjoying working with a string of companies as a fractional executive, kind of get embedded into the team and being part of, their next steps. And that was Hitchhiker Orbital is a good example of that, being part of everything they're doing. Now, but that's not to say I, despite my best interests, I guess I'm still looking at different startups and different opportunities. If I'm going to do one, it's going to be like what I'm exploring right now, which is a new platform by which you can not only connect funders with startups, but you actually can do the majority of the due diligence for the funders. You can do get it to them in a package in a way that they don't have to go sifting through the slush piles. Get rid of the entrepreneurial deck altogether, quite frankly. Get rid of the pitch. Let's just get to work on, is there a market, right? Everything we've been talking about. Is there a leadership team? Is there intellectual property? Is there freedom to operate? Is there a regulatory pathway? Is there manufacturing, distribution, and sales? Do you have all those pieces and have real evidence of that, and having all that part of an automated system? Using existing tools, so that's an example of something I'm looking at. It's more of a system-wide infrastructure sort of piece, not looking at an individual product or an individual company, but how is it that we can unleash an entire new generation of small companies with the availability of really well-vetted capital and reduce the risk of that capital, across the board as well. So it's pretty exciting stuff. We'll see how it goes. As always, I'm in the same place any other entrepreneur would be at any other time. What is that market validation? Are there the go, no go signals across the board for all those things? So it's a pretty busy time.
Yeah, interesting. So I don't know, again, whoever is listening, if they need to contact you for any reason. So maybe you can tell how they can reach you, like LinkedIn maybe is the best idea, or
LinkedIn's the best.
I know you have way too many people reaching out, even us, trying to coordinate
No,
this
it's
podcast.
good.
It was one of those mishaps.
Yeah, no. This is what's great about it. LinkedIn is my best access. I'm not so much looking for solicitations, but anybody who has an interesting opportunity, partnership, or just want to take a look at their company and talk for an hour, I'm always happy to do so.
Yeah, but you do primarily biotech, right? Because it's like kind of like a bread and butter right now.
Right? For a DEX, if I could get away from them, I do. But I hate it when people give me DEX. And in fact, the company concept is called No More DEX that I was just telling you about. Let's just get rid of the DEX altogether. They all look the same. They all say the same thing. They're all useless, in my opinion. I know other people feel very differently. But it's just, in my experience, just come on, man, let's just have a conversation. And I want to get into the real heart of the issue, not your Sam, Tam, Tom, Bob, whatever the market stuff is, all those other things. I'm not interested in that. I want to see if there's a market for what you're doing, and who you are and what your tech is and why it's different, and we can do that without a deck. We can just talk. So, in my opinion.
Yeah, because again, I don't want to open up the Pandora box, but right now AI can generate these decks faster than you can think.
Oh yeah,
so,
well, that's the problem. So no one's thinking.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem. Yeah, I can get you pretty good. Why not? But...
Yeah. All right. Okay, Chris, thank you very much for coming in. As I said, it was very unusual. You're like episode 20, I think, or 19 right now. I forgot them, the lost account, but it's just like
congratulations.
First one that I encounter who is in that biotech industry in general. I have a friend of mine who is in the cancer research, and he is one of those co-founders.
Sure.
But he is the nerdy kind, so they co-founded with him, so he doesn't know the marketing part. He knows the research part, how to do this drug and how to create that drug to fight the specific
I'll say
cancer.
This.
But
I'll say this one thing. But, any technical person, I'll never do what they do. I'll never be a surgeon. I'll never be in the laboratory. Right? They can learn to do what I do. They can. It's just experiential. It's just paying attention and trying to absorb the things and look at things with a certain schema, with certain criteria. They can do what I do, right? And so I don't think anybody should be intimidated by that. They just should be ready to jump that fence and start talking the two different languages, right? And realizing that's where you get really powerful things. It really is that synergy between the two that gets you something that's a real result, in my experience with that. So
yeah, because if you know the back side, basically the whole scientific portion, and can marry you to the business portion, you're golden.
Very, very powerful people. Yeah, very powerful. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, Chris. So thanks again. Thanks for coming in. It was a very enlightening episode, and we'll see. I always say in our episodes, like, hey, we can do probably something like in a year from now and see where we are. Kind of like a repeat of what happened in a year. Maybe some things changed and something new popped up, right?
That'd be great.
Not going to be the same life story because it's the same story, but maybe like a 1 year span story of what happened in that year.
Well, let's hope it's not only the same. I'll be doing this.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's exactly the same thing. Yeah. Hopefully not. Hopefully there's more interesting stuff going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you.
But otherwise, thanks, Chris. Thank you for coming. And until next time.
All right. Thank you.